Hello everybody, welcome to This Week in Svelte. This is Enrico speaking, and joining me is Stanislav.
There.
Welcome. The agenda today is our changelog, quick facts and announcements, a community showcase coming up, followed with discussions. We don't really have Q&A today, but that's okay. Let's go anyway to the changelog. In this past week, 4 days ago, SvelteKit version 1.27.0 has released. It is a feature. Invalidate all Boolean was added to the enhance callback, which is a fascinating feature because by default, the form actions enhance utility will reload everything. It's sort of acting as an invalidate all already. But sometimes people want to enhance their forms and specifically not invalidate their page. So this new Boolean option is added to use enhance, so you can opt out of invalidate all if you so want to. Next is SvelteKit 1.27.1, a patch in which only applies some polyfills below version 18.11. In SvelteKit, if you're using Node.js 18 or so, like several versions of 18, it'll polyfill by default. But it is possible to configure your adapter to not polyfill, especially if you're using Node.js 20 and above. So it's not necessary to polyfill in those versions. Pretty cool, right? And we have somebody with their hand raised. You're welcome to speak now if you have any changelog related questions. Hello.
I don't really have any changelog related questions. Basically, I just wanted to say that I learned Svelte like 2 days ago, and it was really a cool experience because I felt it's something like a new thing, a new kind of thing. And I really liked it. It was a learning curve. I was reluctant at the starting, but it's great so far. I really love it.
Wow, thank you for that testimonial. Glad to have you on here.
Sure, thank you.
Alrighty, and that is the changelog. Next is quick facts and announcements. The first quick fact is, did you know that form inputs wrapped with display none are still submittable? Take a look at this. I have a Svelte Lab demo here and a form on line 5, but on line 6 I have a div wrapper with display none CSS. Inside of that I have two inputs, and I know you'll see the redundancy in a moment. Line 7 is a hidden input with the name hidden. Line 8 is a named input, which is an actual text input with the value wow. Pop quiz. Will I see both of these inputs when I submit the form in my server? Will my server respond? Give me some emoji reactions for yes or no, or type in the chat. In 3, 2, 1. All right, we have one person brave enough to say yes. The answer is yes. So in my page.server.js, I have a default form action. It's calling on line 10 await request.form data, and then it's logging an array of entries. And that's why when I click on submit hidden values, you'll see the hidden values on the backend. Pretty cool, right? So what does this mean? Why am I sharing this? Because if you have some form data, especially like input type hidden, typically you would put hidden inputs just in the body of form. That way some special values get submitted. But let's say you have a pop-out selector like a combo box or a multi-select. It's possible to have those checkboxes or radio buttons inside of a pop-out container, and even if they're hidden with CSS, they're still submitted. So the potential is there for a Node.js version of a combo box or a multi-select. Once the popover API is stable, it might actually be possible to build such a thing, because default HTML behavior, as you can see here, works. Pretty cool, right? I'll pause for feedback while I move on to the next quick fact. There's a new blog by someone you may know, someone here on stage with us. A blog by Stanislav.
Yeah, this blog post is about the locals in SvelteKit. So if you ever wondered how locals work, or actually got multiple comments from people who used Lucia off, and they said that now they understand how Lucia works in a better way after reading this blog post. So yeah, if you're curious about that, you should check it out.
Indeed, link is in the chat below. I will also share my form submission demonstration. Always gotta have links in the chat. Check out this blog if you want to learn more about locals. The next quick fact is another blog that I found written by Kyle. Take a look at this. Kyle Nazario wrote, "How to make a full content RSS feed for your SvelteKit blog." Zooming in for much necessity. The trick here is to have an endpoint with an RSS name in it. So it's like .rss. Yeah, inside routes/rss.xml, create a server.ts. Similar to last week, how Paolo had demonstrated how to generate a CSS file using a server endpoint, you can similarly generate an RSS feed. So this is a nice blog post on how to do that, because even if you don't need an RSS feed, the knowledge is quite transferable. Surprise, Paolo's on stage with us. Hello.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to to finish presenting to hello everyone.
You made it. And that is it for quick facts. Feel free to interrupt me if you have any further notes. Moving on to Community Showcase. We have a special guest. Please welcome to the stage, Felix.
Hi everyone.
Hey, how you doing?
Hi.
That works. Yeah, I'm good. Hey.
So I'll hang back for a bit. Hey, Stanislav, why don't you introduce our friend here and we can take a look at what they created.
Yeah, well, Felix, you posted in the showcase channel like a little bit earlier in the week, and you got a little bit of a reaction there for a new site you built, and I just thought it was a really cool site with a lot of animations. And
So Felix, also known as Flayks, is it okay if you show us what you built with Svelte and walk through the interesting challenge you faced and how you solved it?
Yeah, of course. I don't know. Am I the only one speaking, or is there anyone else speaking?
Oh,
Because
we won't
only
interrupt you.
see-
You can speak for a few minutes and then we can talk about it.
Okay, that's fine. Okay. Well, I will share my screen first. So I made a website for Flayks, who is he's an artist. It's not his name. But he's a French LA-based music producer. And we made an old site together, which was this one, which is pretty much a TV content where you can like see the sound with it, sorry. Where you can pretty much see what it makes as an artist, musician, producer, DJ, etc. So the concept was just get a TV where you can only click. So that was the site we made like years ago. And the concept was to keep that as a little window, keep some other context and content. I'll do that too. And yeah, the goal was to make it a bit more graphic and informal, to have a bit more information about who it is, because we didn't know anything about it. And yeah, like some events, some latest music released, and give some more fun to it. Yeah, that's pretty much the goal of it, and to create a more graphic, immersive, experimental website. So that's mainly the goal, and I felt that it's just so easy to use that it makes it very convenient to make these interactions and transitions and little animations, which I would pull my hair with React or something. Yeah, that's pretty much the concept of the site. It's just a one-page site. If you want some details, it's all based with Sanity, so it doesn't have to do anything with the code. You just put some videos and content. It's all like made with sections, so the text and the images can be updated, even the themes, like up the top, the text of the color, the image of the background color, and everything is pretty much editable. Yeah, I give full control to him, so he can have fun with it as well. It's like a very modular website, and yeah, it's also using Turbo Repo, which I kept, which is very convenient to. If I show you some code, it's just convenient to use like different packages and and apps in the same repo. So yeah, utils and stuff like that. And also host sanity and the website on the same repo. What else? The site is pretty much based on components all the way. I made like a section for each pretty much section. Like the introduction here is the intro component, and I have a style sheet for each. Then I have some code and props for the text, and the data. And then some, like, for example, here, like the little parallax effect on the top is just using motion 1, which is a little library based from motion, thermal motions, right? And yeah, like it's just very simple elements decompose, so it's easier to manage all the site. But yeah, like I didn't really have much trouble doing this site, except maybe the text stack, key text effect, which was very tricky. And it took me some time to first explain what I wanted. Because I didn't know myself how to make that happen without pretty much converting all the text from encoded to decoded. I wanted some kind of randomness in it. So I had to explain it to pretty much ChatGPT because I had no idea. So based from this code pen that I found, which was using JSON, I believe, is not necessary, and goes from left to right. I pretty much said to, I don't know, make it more random and create some artifacts in it. And yeah, it's pretty much, if I go to the effects of that, animations, I created a function called decode text that I can use literally anywhere I want without any parameters, all parameters defined with loopit or with a delay, for example. And yeah, I use it pretty much everywhere I want that way. So I can change the speed and change like a lot of things. And to be honest, I don't understand everything, especially the encoding and decoding. It's a bit random, a bit obscure to me, but what I understand is that I just pass the characters that I want to use, and it's doing some kind of mishmash like stuff itself to create this like encoding and decoding effect. So we have like this cool, here it's not looped, but at the top in the intro it's looped every 5 seconds. I said that here. All the other ones I just made using the viewport. So detecting if it's entering or leaving the viewport, and the effect runs again. So that was probably the most complex thing to do without relying on any animation library. But Svelte made it pretty easy to make with the actions. So shout out to Svelte.
Yeah, cool. We can go to some comments now. Thank you for presenting. And it looks like the most interesting challenge was randomizing the text for that expression that you really wanted to get right. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That was the main challenge.
What's
Took
cool
me like
about,
a few days.
yeah, like getting the decoder the way you wanted to probably was the hardest part.
Yeah.
But it looks like the end result is a Svelte action. And that's a very familiar thing we all like and enjoy. So yeah, Brady asked in the comments. Sorry, go ahead, Paolo, you first.
Yeah, I basically had the same question of Stanislav. Like, did you use motion?
Well, I didn't actually use motion that much, to be honest. If I go to motion in the search, I use it only for the scroll because it has a good scroll function to detect where we want to start and where we want to end, which is very convenient. And then from that, I just here, for example, change the parallax with a loop, the function I made, the loop function, from a value to another, and then I apply that. So here it's contact, for example. Here I say, where is it? Image parallax, yeah. I just set a CSS variable to change the translate of an image, pretty much. So I didn't use it extensively. It's mostly CSS for the animations. Like all the stuff you see, like the little 3D arrow here, it's just CSS. It's smooth scroll, but that's a library, just Linux. All the effects are pretty much CSS like that.
Did you
There's no
design this
JavaScript in there.
yourself?
Yeah, it's just hovers, and like for example, this cross logo here is just getting the same scroll function, but over the whole page, not over a section. So I just rotate it from 0 to 110, and it just rotates. That's it. So yeah, not much of a.
Cool. Not sure if you heard
extensive use
Paolo,
for machines.
but we were wondering, did you design everything yourself?
Yes, I did with him, Jean-Marc, that's his name. He's a creative director, so he has a good idea of what he would like, but didn't really design too much. Just gave me like a free pass. I could do everything. I'm a designer by trade, we'll say. That's mostly what I do, and I also do some coding. And in this site, we also collaborated with my partner. He helped me on some parts as well, so we did it together. I was not the only one working on it. So it's like a good combo of 3 people, essentially.
Very nice. Well, thank you again for presenting today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for proposing. I didn't expect that. So
This is what we
Very,
do.
very cool.
that's right, great. Very nice to give back to the community.
Yeah, if anyone else in the audience makes something using Svelte, such as a library that's for Svelte developers, or if you made a really challenging website with Svelte and you want to share those challenges with us, you're welcome to join us in a future week. So that's an open invitation. Thanks again for presenting, and we'll move back to This Week in Svelte.
Thank you.
My computer's crying. I'll console it.
Did you download more RAM?
No, sadly. They ran out. I went to the RAM store and they just couldn't. Okay.
They ram out of RAM.
Not again. We're moving on to discussions. Today in discussions, I want to talk to everybody about something near and dear to me, and that is about the pillars of a component library. I have some links and some talking points, so let's bring it up now. What are the pillars of a component library? This is a conversation mostly about when building a component library, not necessarily a perfect one, but if you want something that is usable and it has good fundamentals, what considerations need to be made? I have a link to a thread that you can review later. So there's a thread about this topic that I had made. And I've identified personally a few pillars, but this is all up for discussion because I don't think anyone is quite an expert on this, but even if they were, most component libraries are different necessarily, and we'll dive into that. First of all, style customization and theming is, I guess, a kind of pillar. Most of the time when you're building a component library, it's brand specific, so this isn't necessarily needed. But if something is open and it's meant to be consumed by a wide audience, then this becomes more and more necessary. 2, accessible interactions and aesthetics. I say and aesthetics because accessibility is more than keyboard and screen reader interactions. It's also contrast, padding, spacing. A lot of visual things like focus management goes into accessible interactions. Thirdly, open UI coverage, which is a lazy way of saying there's a large quantity of components that cover a user, like a vast use case. OpenUI is a project that's designed to fill the gaps of HTML primitives that are missing. For example, an alert component, for example, breadcrumbs, cards. Everything here is meant to be a blueprint for what could be the future of HTML and the future of the web, because right now we have to make things like custom selects by ourselves using JavaScript. But if there's a future where we can see these complex interactions done only using HTML, that's great. But in the meantime, it's a consideration for a component library. And then lastly, intuitive developer controls, the juicy part, the thing that we like to debate and discuss the most. Things like naming your props, things like naming your slots or providing certain functionality, whether it's a single component export or multiple component exports. I want to bring the question to all of you now, and we can start with those of us on stage. What do you consider to be pillars of a component library, in a broad sense or in a fine-grained sense?
Well, definitely, for example, I think style and customization and theming, it's important, but it depends on the kind of library that you're building. Because, for example, Material UI, you have a very, like, if you choose Material UI, you choose it because you want it to look like Material UI. So style and customization is less of an issue. Theming maybe, because you can have different colors, for example, and the same overall look and feel. So that is something that, I mean, it's always depending on what's your real target, I guess. Like if you are building something like Melt UI, which Thomas is in the chat talking about, you obviously want that to be as much as stylable as possible. So it really depends on what's your target audience and what's also the kind of library that you are building, because obviously if you're building an headless library, you obviously want it to be as much stylable and customizable as possible. Accessibility, I think that's the real pillar. Like every UE library should actually be accessible, because you have the opportunity to build a component that people will use. So you should strive for 100% accessibility. The coverage is important, but again, it really depends on how much you want your library to be like taking the role of the HTML, because maybe you just want to provide some basic components, but obviously the more component you can provide, the nicer your UE library will be. And I guess the DX is actually something that is really important, because if you don't have a good DX, it might become not worth to choose your UI library over just style. Then, if it's difficult to use your custom select, I might just as well build my own.
Part of what motivated this discussion, and Stanislav, you can go next for sure. It's I was wondering is it even possible to build a component library that has a wide audience? For example, you want to start a project, you don't want to spend any time designing. You don't want to spend much time figuring out layouts or component interactions. You just want to grab something off the shelf, apply it to your project, adopt its intricacies and layouts and interactions, and you're happy enough with that. And there's enough built-in theming to achieve what you need, whether it's a CRUD or marketing site or informational article. I was wondering if it's possible for something like that to exist, but that could be tabled if needed. Go ahead, Khromov.
No, but actually, speaking of what you said, that was actually the one thing I was thinking of, is that a lot of these libraries are just components, in quotes. I actually find it quite hard to find libraries that have more complete examples, like a dashboard or a chat app or something like that, because that's actually something I look for in a UI framework. Because if I've chosen to like not make my own components, then I'm thinking like, I might as well make it look like Bootstrap, and then I want like all the default kind of looks and layouts that come with that, and not just like a drop down.
Yeah, as Thomas is saying in the chat, and I think I agree with you, like I think the thing that more closely resemble these 5 pillars is probably Shadcn UI, and I think is one of the reasons why it's so exploding in popularity, because you actually have all the flexibility of style your own components, while at the same time you really have off-the-shelf, even complex things, like you have an off-the-shelf table, an off-the-shelf dashboard, with a great coverage and like intuitive DX and accessibility, given that it's using Radix. And in turn, ShotCN UI Svelte, which is the library that we got, like that is using MultiUI by Hantabyte, is something that really can strive to be a popular one. One issue that I have with those kind of things is that despite them being very customizable, you will probably end up seeing that design a lot in the future. And that, I think, it's a problem because like it's the reason why Bootstrap kind of fell off the shelf, because every website started to look like Bootstrap. Every website started to look at like Material UI, and in a while we will probably see every website starting to look like ShotCN UI, and after a while it gets like stale.
I don't think the average user cares too much about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, as a user, you probably don't care about the fact that the website you are on is very similar to the one you were looking at. But it's important for if you are writing a library, your user is also the developer. And as a developer, I personally don't like when my website look just like the other website. So if you want to build a library that is broadly adopted, it's something that you have to keep in mind, like the fact that it should be customizable enough to actually let developers build very different UIs with your library.
I had a follow-up question to this because I often read that some UI libraries call themselves unstyled, but I've never understood what that means because they clearly have a default style. Maybe you guys can enlighten me on what that actually means.
Sorry,
I think it's just like that they are probably stylable with, like, you can style them however you want, but they provide you with default styles. Do you have any concrete examples of this library?
I was just pulling up headlessui.com and they say they're unstyled, but you know, they have obviously a style. So because they don't just look like HTML elements.
Yeah, I think, like, for example, Headless UI provides you, like, if you literally copy and paste the code from their styling, they will have a style, but you can style them however you want. So
I wanted to ask everyone here, this is obviously a very narrow audience, so it's grain of salt. How much do you care as a developer how your site looks aesthetically? 1 for a lot, 2 for a bit, 3 not much. I'll just take what the library or component gives. On the topic of Bootstrap, the reason Bootstrap proliferated the internet so well is because it's a CSS library. It's so easy to apply Bootstrap to anything, whether it's PHP, React, Svelte, it doesn't matter. And that's if you want something to be adopted that well, I'm not saying adoption is a pillar, but if something were to adopt and take the internet by storm, it sort of has to serve HTML first and then something like Svelte second, wouldn't it?
yes, absolutely. There's also, like, one of the reasons why I think Tailwind is taking everything, like, is really popular, is because it really is just CSS. Like, you can literally do whichever design you want. It's just a different way of writing CSS. And that's why, for example, when people say that Tailwind, like, you don't have to know CSS if you use Tailwind, that's absolutely false in my opinion, because you literally have to know CSS if you want to use Tailwind. So I think that's one of the reasons why Tailwind is that broadly adopted, is because you can literally make whichever design you want with Tailwind. And yes, again, with Bootstrap is kind of the same, except for the fact that, like, if you want to override Bootstrap styles, you have to do a bit much work. So that's maybe one of the reasons why it's declining in popularity, if it's even true, because I don't know if it's true.
I think this discussion is super interesting in context with this demo that we just saw that was very, very far from a kind of standard Bootstrap site. And I think that's kind of the gist also with your question, Enrico, that for some sites, it's totally okay if they look kind of standard, and sometimes it's even better for users. But sometimes you just want a vibe. and you can't get that from any component library, I think.
Oh no, that was like a side note completely. What Felix had demonstrated minutes earlier was a work of art. Like it's really awesome, and it's like 100% expression, which is exactly what an artist or a musician needs, and that's totally valid and fair. This topic is more about like reusable component libraries, which is largely informational sites or CRUDs or interactive sites. It's almost impossible to build a component library for a work of art. So like Brady in the chat has been giving examples of building components from scratch because they care a lot about how a site looks, and they also just have fun making components, and that's valid too. But if you're someone like me, I'm not, well, should I call myself a lazy developer? I want something that is trustworthy, that I can build CRUDs rapidly. I want to be productive, and I don't want to hamper the user experience in any way. So when I came up with these pillars, I was sort of selfish as I came up with these because I wanted to build something quickly. And for those of you in the chat who answered number 2 in my poll about caring a bit about how a site looks, I suppose, what do you mean by that? Is it because you have certain standards you want the library to have? Or is it about you actually want some freedom of choice in theming? To what extent do you care? Let me know what you think.
And I can actually let you know because I am one of the 3 people that answered a bit. And like the reason because I care a bit is because, again, as much things in tech, it depends. Like, obviously, if it's a website for an artist, I care a lot about how much my website is not equal to the other. If my website is for an internal tool for a company, I don't care at all of how it looks because, I mean, it's just an internal tool. If it's something that is for user facing, I care quite. Like I would like to have a cool design, a rememberable design. Obviously, like if it's something that it's literally equal to any other website, I will not properly like it. So that's why I answered a bit.
Well, Paolo, because of that it depends answer, I am now promoting you to Design Caesar.
I'm getting promotion by the week.
How many weeks until Paolo reaches CTO? Find out on This Week in Svelte next week and the week after.
CEO of It Depends.
Let's see some more comments. Let's see. Tantikun says, you can always use plain CSS for complex stuff. Is it possible to have a material library that's also customizable? Yeah, and I know you're working on a material tailwind combination thing. That's sort of what I'm going to get at, is like conventional component libraries designed for broad use cases. Obviously, if you have particular brand needs or particular artist needs, then those use cases fall apart, which is why you'll never get 100% coverage in any component library. It just won't happen. But for the most conventional informational websites and CRUD-based ones, yeah, that's the one I care a lot about. And I'm curious if something like this can be put together, covering all these pillars with light customization and theming. For example, here's a dense theme for your CRUD. Here's a broad theme for your article consumption blog. And maybe some colors to go with it that are all accessible with good enough contrast and adequate keyboard focus, guidelines, recipes that you can copy and paste, and just be more productive, whether it's in Svelte or HTML. If such a thing could exist, it would probably be really hard, wouldn't it? Imagine the maintenance effort.
Yeah, again, I think like something that is really close to this is ShadCN UI, because I think you get the accessibility. I mean, it's actually pretty smart because basically, like the main UI library is deferring most of its work because you get the accessibility because you are using Radix UI. You get the styling because you are using Tailwind. You get the intuitive developer control from the Radix UI. And basically, you just need to care about the coverage. So what it's doing is just saying, okay, I will build components that looks good for you with Radix. And this is, again, pretty smart because basically he's saying, okay, the styling, it's up to you. Like it's up to Tailwind to take care of, but the fact that you can style it however you want. Accessibility, it's up to Radix. So is deferring part of these pillars.
Yeah, I see the point because you're copy pasting code snippets, and the part that does get updated is melt in the case of Shanxi and Svelte. So it's interesting
exactly.
how if there are like bug fixes to be had, the underlying melt connections have you covered. But when it comes to aesthetics, that's pretty much deferred anyway. It's like the moment you copy paste, it's yours. You got to customize it. The thing that I don't like about that, not saying it's a bad thing, that definitely works really well for a lot of use cases because it's infinitely flexible. The thing that doesn't work for me is I need something that has good contrast and good focus states and good theming out of the box because I don't want to think about that. I don't want to customize it, nor do I have a brand that I need to appease. So because I don't have those needs, it would be nice if it just gave me a good theme out of the box.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are, especially like in the newer release, I think there are themes for Shadxian UI. Obviously, I mean, it really depends. Again, it depends
Uh-oh.
on like how much custom, like how much that you want your team to be broad.
Yeah, I see Thomas is hinting at a ecosystem or marketplace of themes that you can adopt. And that's, I think, a great idea as well. Like not just for Shadxian, but any component library. You could expose CSS variables, and then there could be open source themes that you can easily adopt by consuming a single CSS file or other mechanism in place. That sounds cool. Maybe Svelte can be enhanced to support loading or unloading built-in styles using compiler hints. Currently, it's possible in Svelte to unload all CSS indiscriminately, but it's not yet possible to decide which module or which component library you're in your package.json should or should not load styles. Imagine if it could. That would be kind of interesting, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's go up and see a few more comments. Stocky wrote, theming and consistency is important. Yes, it absolutely is. I hope I didn't falsely advertise the idea of, hey, here's a component library where every interactive component is completely different style from each other. That would be chaotic. No one wants that.
Unless you're an artist.
Oh yeah, open canvas, right?
Yes.
Thomas says, look at Zag and see how some of their examples are similar to Radix, more in the examples in the code. Melt is not immune to this. Yeah, the underlying headless approach, I'm almost developing a taxonomy on the fly, but yes, the buried headless component approach, which Shadxian is definitely great because it covers that. It casts a wide net when it comes to customizability. And I think it's impossible to have a one-size-fits-all component library, but I wonder how many different variations of a library can exist that casts just enough wide nets so that people can have all their needs satisfied. But who knows? Time will tell.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, like, what were they talking about was also about the fact that most in website from the same industry ends up looking very similar one another. And I think Thomas is right. Like, obviously, it's even a normal and I guess also a good thing that when you are trying to develop something, you will look for inspiration about the same field. And this kind of even the field a bit, which is also good because maybe it lets the user choose not based on a fancy design, but more on the essence of your service.
It's kind of interesting how full software as a service products or websites in general do copy a lot of the aesthetics from each other. It's mostly fine, but that's sort of their call because if they have hired designers and they're tasked to follow a certain brand or develop a new unique brand, and yet they don't make a unique brand, then that's on them for adopting Bootstrap or something else like headless UI. Examples have to be specific there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, everyone is copying linear today.
Maybe if you're a developer, that's how it seems. I wonder if any one of you have like friends, family, or acquaintances who browse the internet. I doubt any of them are going to software as a service websites.
I'm thinking about how many tens of hundreds of thousands of Bootstrap dashboards there are for like internal tools and things that are never seen by the public eye. maybe millions.
Absolutely, yes. Also, on this note, I love, like, for very internal tools, I love, there are a specific kind of, I will not call them like component library, because it's not component library, but it's something like, are probably styling library, like Pico CSS, for example, where you can just literally drop in your style sheet from a CDN, and your website will look decent enough. And that's very good, because also like tells you, like, to teaches you to write good HTML. So this is also something very good. And this is something that, like, it's very interesting, because you can make your example looking very good just by putting in a CDN link.
Really? Themable is with EA? Okay. Thanks, spellcheck. Yes, Paolo, the classless CSS library is a cool thing, because if you have semantic HTML, you can just throw in a CSS file and it's all done. It's all, layout is good, spacing between elements is good, you can ship it.
Ship it.
Yeah, this isn't a taxonomy exercise, so don't take this too seriously. I won't define what these are too much. But that was a good discussion. Thank you all for participating. With that said, let's wrap up. That was discussions. No questions and answers for today, but thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye, everyone.